The need for a European shield, Zelensky's call to action. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's impassioned plea for a European army at the Munich Security Conference has sent ripples across the geopolitical landscape. This bold proposition reflects the growing anxieties within Europe, particularly in the shadow of an increasingly assertive Russia. Zelensky's call to action is not merely a plea for assistance, but a stark reminder of Europe's vulnerability and the urgent need for self-reliance in matters of defense. The Ukrainian president's appeal is deeply rooted in the ongoing conflict with Russia. Having witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of Russian aggression, Zelensky understands the critical importance of a strong and unified European defense force. He argues that a united front is essential to deter future acts of aggression, not just against Ukraine, but against any European nation that might find itself in Russia's crosshairs. Zelensky's vision for a European army is not without merit. It recognizes the limitations of relying solely on the United States for security, particularly in light of shifting geopolitical priorities. The U.S., under the Trump administration, has signaled a shift in its global outlook, emphasizing the need for Europe to shoulder a greater share of the defense burden. This sentiment, echoed by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, underscores the evolving dynamics of the transatlantic relationship and the need for Europe to step up and take greater responsibility for its own security. However, the path to realizing Zelensky's vision is fraught with challenges. Creating a unified European army would require overcoming significant political and logistical hurdles. It would necessitate a fundamental shift in European defense cooperation, moving beyond the existing framework of NATO and towards a more integrated and independent European defense structure. The bear awakens Russia's military expansion and aggressive posture. Fueling Zelensky's call for a European army are Russia's increasingly assertive military actions and expansionist ambitions. Russia's recent military movements, including a significant troop buildup and the deployment of forces to Belarus, have raised alarm bells across Europe. These actions, coupled with Russia's continued defiance of international norms, paint a worrisome picture of a nation determined to reassert its dominance in its near abroad. Zelensky's concerns about Russia's intentions are not unfounded. The Kremlin's recent actions, including a drone attack on the Chernobyl sarcophagus, demonstrate a blatant disregard for international security and serve as a stark reminder of Russia's willingness to use force to achieve its objectives. The attack on Chernobyl, a site of immense historical and environmental significance, underscores the unpredictable and potentially catastrophic nature of Russia's actions. Russia's military buildup, marked by a 150,000 troop increase, is particularly concerning. This expansion, far exceeding any legitimate defense needs, signals a clear intent to enhance Russia's offensive capabilities. The deployment of forces to Belarus, ostensibly for training exercises, further heightens tensions. This move positions Russian troops closer to NATO's eastern flank, raising concerns about potential incursions into neighboring European countries. The lack of transparency surrounding Russia's military activities only amplifies these concerns. The Kremlin's insistence that these deployments are purely defensive lacks credibility in light of Russia's history of aggression in the region. The absence of clear and verifiable explanations for these military movements fuels suspicion and creates an atmosphere of distrust, making it difficult to interpret Russia's intentions with any certainty. A shifting tide evolving U.S.-Europe relations and the call for European self-reliance. Zelensky's call for a European army also highlights the shifting dynamics in U.S.-Europe relations, particularly in the realm of defense. The Trump administration's America First policy, coupled with its skepticism towards multilateralism, has cast a long shadow over the transatlantic alliance. The U.S., once considered the guarantor of European security, is now seen as a less reliable partner, prompting European nations to reassess their defense strategies. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's recent statements, emphasizing Europe's need to step up on defense, underscore this changing dynamic. Vance's remarks reflect a growing sentiment within the U.S. that Europe has become overly reliant on American military might and must assume greater responsibility for its own security. This shift in U.S. policy, while not entirely unexpected, has created a sense of unease among European nations, particularly those bordering Russia. The evolving U.S.-Europe relationship has significant implications for European security. With the U.S. seemingly less willing to commit to European defense, European nations are faced with a stark choice: either increase their own defense spending and capabilities, or risk becoming more vulnerable to external threats. This dilemma is particularly acute for countries like Ukraine, which are not members of NATO and therefore do not benefit from the alliance's collective defense guarantees. Zelensky's call for a European army can be seen as a direct response to this evolving security landscape. By advocating for a more independent and capable European defense force, Zelensky is essentially urging Europe to take its destiny into its own hands. He recognizes that in a world where the US is retreating from its global commitments, Europe can no longer afford to rely solely on American protection and must instead forge its own path toward security. Navigating the labyrinth: Ukraine's quest for security and the future of European defense. Ukraine's own predicament underscores the complexities of European security in the 21st century. Caught in the geopolitical crosscurrents between Russia and the West, Ukraine faces an existential threat from its larger and more powerful neighbor. Zelensky's government, acutely aware of this threat, has been desperately seeking security guarantees from the West, particularly in the form of NATO membership. However, Ukraine's path to NATO membership is fraught with obstacles. Russia, vehemently opposed to NATO's eastward expansion, views Ukraine's potential membership as a direct threat to its own security interests. The Kremlin has repeatedly warned against such a move, threatening dire consequences if Ukraine were to join the alliance. This firm opposition from Russia has effectively stalled Ukraine's NATO aspirations, leaving the country in a precarious security limbo. The lack of consensus within NATO itself further complicates matters. While some member states, particularly those in Eastern Europe, strongly support Ukraine's membership, others are more hesitant. They fear that admitting Ukraine into NATO could provoke Russia and escalate tensions further. This division within the alliance has prevented any decisive action on Ukraine's membership bid, leaving the country vulnerable to Russian aggression. Despite these challenges, Zelensky remains determined to secure Ukraine's future. His call for a European army, while ambitious, reflects his understanding that Ukraine's security is inextricably linked to that of Europe as a whole. He recognizes that a strong and united Europe is essential to deterring Russian aggression and ensuring the stability of the continent. Whether Zelensky's vision will materialize remains to be seen, but his call to action has undoubtedly injected a sense of urgency into the debate on European defense.